reporting to the server, session recording in progress. Let's see what we got here. Speaker now. Connected. North Atlantic, Appalachian Region 1, NPS. We'd like to welcome folks from the region. We also have some folks from the national capital and a couple other folks that are sort of lurking. That's fine. Today we've got Heidi Graham, who's our IT, I'm not sure, Uber Guru, is that how we describe you these days? The grand poobah.
Let's not.
Anyway, Heidi is a great resource, and we're going to go over some communication tools, and we're going to jump right in with the collaboration and communication tools that are available to you as a regional employee, how to get into them and maximize them in these times of distributed work. And even when it's all over, this transition from 365 really showing you some of the tools that can help you really make a difference. So I think at this point we can go ahead and turn it over to you, Heidi. Just to let everybody know, you're on mute. So if you have any questions, I'll be monitoring the chat section. And we can put them in there, and we'll have lots of QA opportunities. But we'll go in sections. So we'll talk about telecommunications first, then we'll work into OneDrive and Teams, and then up into SharePoint. And then from there, we are going to go ahead and open it up. So Heidi?
Great. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. My name is Heidi Graham. I am the branch manager for information services here in the regional office in Philadelphia. And as Dom mentioned, the purpose of today's session is to provide all of you a brief overview of the collaboration tools that are available to all employees, and to do some short demos, and then to answer any questions that you have. This isn't a training session per se. We are going to talk about training throughout this session and where you can find it if you want more information. And as Dom also mentioned, there's a lot of resources that we will be sending out after this call to go over anything that we're talking about today, as well as point you where some online resources are that you may find useful in terms of finding additional information. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Give me a minute to share my desktop. Out of a whole bunch of all right. So we're going to talk about collaboration tools. I have a few slides. I'm not going to kill you with PowerPoint this morning. Going over a number of items that we have for collaboration, and then we're going to jump right into several demos. So let's start off with just a minute here. Okay. First off, we'd like to talk about our legacy resources, and those include audio conferencing and web conferencing. For audio conferencing, and this is through Verizon conferencing services that are available to the federal government, we have two different options available to us. The first of which is instant meeting accounts. Most of our parks, as well as our regional office divisions, have had instant meeting accounts assigned to them for years. Instant meeting accounts, if you're not familiar with them, are basically on-demand conference lines that you can use anytime for an unlimited number of meetings. They support up to 100 callers at a time, and you can they can be assigned to an individual, or often work groups will share those instant meeting lines just to host conferences on demand. If you need additional instant meeting accounts assigned to your division or your park, you can work through me to get those reserved, or you can contact your IT specialist at your park, and they can assist you with requesting additional instant meeting accounts. All of the instant meeting accounts are centrally billed through the Washington office, so there is no direct charge for those services. In addition to instant meeting accounts, we also have an option to have Verizon host a one-time conference call for your site, and those come in two different varieties. They're managed calls and unmanaged calls. Unmanaged calls are basically a one-time conference call. You don't have a conference leader. And the reason why you would reserve a one-time conference call is, say you want to have you don't have a need to have a recurring meeting and you just want to do it once. So you reserve a one-time conference call, or you need to have more lines than 100 for, say, a larger call. You can do that through a one-time conference call. The way that those are arranged is you need to contact the conference center, and again, you can go through me or go through the IT specialist at your park to make that reservation, and that usually can be done the same day of your conference call. The other option we have for one-time conference calls are what's called a managed call, and that's where you have a meeting leader and you can use additional features such as having your conference call recorded. You can have a meeting manager put everyone on mute and have a Q&A session. You can record the participants that are on the call, and there are a number of other features that are available. This just changed this week as of Wednesday because of the high demand on the Verizon Federal Conferencing Services. We were notified late Wednesday that at this time they are not taking reservations for managed calls, but I did want to talk about them this morning because this is a feature that they normally have and we expect to have after the pandemic crisis is over. So again, that's a really nice tool if you want to have a more organized managed call. Many of you may have participated in region calls that were hosted that way, where maybe you were put on mute and then there was a Q&A at the end, and those are our managed calls that are run through the conference center. In addition to audio conferencing, we also have a couple of options for web conferencing. One of them is the one that we're using today, which is Cisco Webex. As Dom mentioned, we have different options for Webex. One of them is to host meetings that are up to 25 participants. These are through individual Webex licenses that various sites within the Park Service have paid for. I know in the regional office we have a couple of licenses that we use to support employee Webex sessions, and there are a few parks in our region that also have Webex licenses, and those parks include Boston Park, Gateway, Appalachian Trail, Statue of Liberty, and Colonial. If you are at a park that does not have a Webex account, you are welcome to use the regional office Webex accounts. Just let me know, and we'll be happy to provide you that information to host a Webex session of your own. The Webex accounts support audio, video, and screen sharing. And again, you can set up an unlimited number of meetings through Cisco Webex. If your need is for more than 25 participants, then you can request to have access to the account that we're using today that Dominic manages, and that supports meetings up to 1,000 participants. And again, you can contact Dominic directly if you're interested in having access to that Cisco Webex account to host a meeting. Webex meetings can include employees inside the department and also outside. This is not behind the firewall, so you can invite anybody to a Webex meeting. Moving on. Just a minute here.
Heidi, just let me, before you go on with the WebEx, the meeting license and the training license. The training license has things like breakout sessions and different controls on it that make it for more interactive, whereas the meetings are usually smaller video conferencing, window sharing between smaller groups of people. So the intent of the larger service is to be able to manage it like a classroom or a facilitation. So thinking of it like that is helpful. So the features are slightly different. They're a little bit more robust in the 1,000-person level. That being said, there's only one license. So being very judicious, because I've had people say, well, we're going to have more than 25 people or 100 people. Honestly, think about who you're meeting with and why you're meeting. But then we have the commitment to help you figure out how to do these things. And so we'll produce back in 2 of them for you at the training level. And after that, you're going to be on your own. So that's how we'll be able to support larger people.
Thanks, Tom. With Cisco Webex as well, and we're going to get into Teams in a few minutes, Microsoft Teams does a lot of things that are similar to Webex. And because of that, we are going to be looking at phasing out the use of Webex, at least the 25 participant licenses that we currently pay for, after this fiscal year. So as of right now, you still have access through the end of the fiscal year for any of the licenses that we have in the regional office. It will be up to individual parks whether they decide to continue to pay for those 25 participant licenses or not. But again, you may find that once you start using Microsoft Teams, that may meet your needs as well. So we're just letting you know all of the available licenses that we have. When I'm talking about phasing out the WebEx licenses, I'm only talking about the 25 user licenses, not the license that Dom has. That is to support, as he mentioned, training purposes and larger meetings, and that will still continue. In addition to Cisco Webex, I also wanted to mention, and this is new information, that we do have access to use Zoom now. We were just notified about that this week. And if you're unfamiliar with Zoom, it's another audio, video, screen sharing platform that's commercially available. If you Google Zoom, you'll go right to their site. We'll also provide a link in the resources that we're going to send out after today's webinar. Zoom does have free licenses available. You just go to the site and sign up, and that will support meetings of up to 100 people for 40 minutes. They also have additional options. If you choose to pay a monthly subscription fee, you can get a license that has additional features such as the ability to host larger meetings, record meetings, and trying to think of the other ones off the top of my head, have longer meetings than 40 minutes. So you can take a look at that as well if you're looking for other options to meet your needs. And again, that's another option that's outside of the firewall. You can have anybody on a Zoom meeting. So at this point, let me stop and ask if there's any questions about audio conferencing or web conferencing before we move to Office 365.
Can you stop sharing your desktop real quick so people can access?
Sure.
Chat a little bit better. Great. So we had a question about the 25 licenses versus 1,000 licenses. Yes, we're going to be keeping 1,000 licenses. Will Teams be able to keep up with some of this stuff? And we'll be exploring that in a bit. I think that's good. Comment on Zoom going to Facebook and accounts, whether you have one or not. Question about bandwidth. It's all off the same server. Right? The more people you have on it, the more bandwidth you need.
Yep.
The team has an issue potentially with like server-side bandwidth, and we'll talk about that when we get into Teams. So your individual experience may be different than other people's experience on the Teams. I can say both for Teams and WebEx and Zoom, they are outside the firewall. Please do not go through the VPN. This jams the VPN and also makes latency and makes your WebEx and your Zoom meeting go way slow. So come out of the VPN, which you don't need for Office 365 anyway. So if you're on an Office 365 product, you don't need to go through the VPN. And WebEx is outside the firewall. Well, looks like that's it for that section. You ready to move on to the next piece?
Okay, we are ready. All right, a second here. All right, we're going to talk about Office 365 for a few minutes, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the demo. So first of all, we just wanted to talk for a few minutes about the types of collaboration tools that are available to all of you under Office 365 and when you would use each of them. Even though OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint are replacements for other tools that we had in Google Drive, they don't behave exactly the same. So we wanted to point out a few of the differences. When you had Google, you had access to Google Drive to share your files. In Microsoft, you have access to OneDrive, and that's where all of your Google files, your Google Drive files, when they migrated, that's where they went, was to OneDrive. OneDrive is designed really to share with just a few people, and I know that the behavior in Google Drive was that we used Google Drive to share with one person. We also use Google Drive to share with lots of people. You really don't want to repeat that behavior in OneDrive. You really want to focus OneDrive on sharing with one individual or a small group. If you have a need to share with larger groups, you really should use Microsoft Teams or SharePoint. So again, OneDrive is to store and edit your individual files. The other comment that I wanted to make about OneDrive is that as a best practice, you really should look at OneDrive as a place to start a particular document. But when you have that document in final, you really should be making a decision about where that document should live, whether it should be stored on a Teams site or it should be stored on a Sharepoint site in the long term. And the reason why we suggest that as a best practice is that if you leave the National Park Service and your account is deleted from Office 365, so are all of your documents. So we certainly don't want that to happen. That did happen when we were using Google as well. So that's just another reason to make sure that when your critical records are finalized, that they're moved to a more permanent storage location. Microsoft Teams is for sharing documents and resources with your teams. It's a great resource for folks to communicate and collaborate on documents, group projects, chat, do all kinds of things, and you'll see that in the demo. It's a fun tool in my opinion, and it's just a different way to work. The way that Teams was designed is that Microsoft really views that as your desktop versus the way that we're accustomed to working, which is spending the majority of our day in our email. That's not really how Microsoft views its Office 365 platform. The way that they look at it is that Microsoft Teams is your desktop, and then you're going to other resources from the Teams platform. And really, and you'll see this in a few minutes, you can get to anything you need from your Teams desktop. If you have the need to share resources, share documents with a larger group of people, or manage permissions to particular files and resources, that's when you want to use SharePoint. You can build traditional web pages in SharePoint, you can store documents, and those documents can live for a long time on a SharePoint site. I know a lot of you are familiar with SharePoint from the SharePoint that we currently have hosted through the Denver Data Center. So again, SharePoint is to use for large group sharing. Move on. So again, OneDrive is your personal filing cabinet and where your Google Drive files are. I'm just going to go through these really quickly. With Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Teams supports up to 250 users. As Dom mentioned a few minutes ago, your actual experience in Teams meetings is going to be dictated somewhat by the bandwidth that you have at your particular location. But again, you can support up to 250 users on a Teams site and in a Teams meeting. I have certainly not been on a Teams meeting that's that large. Probably the most people that I've had in a Teams meeting was about 50 or 60. Whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to jump to SharePoint so quickly. Excuse me. Meetings can be hosted by anyone who has the Teams app. So again, if you're using Microsoft Teams and you need to communicate with people outside of the department, you can certainly do that within Teams. They just have to go to the Microsoft Teams, they have to go to Microsoft Site, download Teams onto whatever resource they're using. If it's their phone or their computer, it doesn't really matter. And they can connect to a Teams meeting. What it looks like if you're hosting a Teams meeting and you have someone joining your meeting that is outside of the department, they're actually going to join to your meeting as a guest. And you, as the meeting host, will have to click on their name to basically let them enter your Teams meeting. That's the only difference in terms of them joining a meeting. The other thing you need to be aware of is that if you have external folks joining a Teams meeting, you cannot share OneDrive files with them because those are behind the firewall. So again, you don't have any restrictions in terms of meetings. Where you do run into restrictions if you're trying to share OneDrive files with them. You can access Microsoft Teams from your government computer or your government phone. So if you haven't noticed when you had your phone repartitioned for Office 365, if you look on your phone and look for the app catalog, there is a new app catalog. It's not the App Store, the Apple App Store, but you have an app catalog, and in that app catalog, you'll see icons for Microsoft Teams. If you click on that, you can download and install Teams on your government phone, as well as some other Office 365 apps. So that would give you the ability to join a Teams meeting if you don't happen to have your computer with you. I know Dom mentioned earlier that the Teams experience is enhanced if you have a headset because it uses the audio through your computer. It just makes it a little bit easier to hear and be heard in a meeting. We'll move on to SharePoint. Let me just point out a few things about SharePoint before we take a look at these applications. We have two versions of SharePoint currently existing in the National Park Service. The SharePoint that you may have been familiar with from years past is actually SharePoint 2013. It is not in the cloud. Those SharePoint sites are located at the Denver Data Center, and those are the ones that we've had. Some sites have had them for years. Those sites will eventually become SharePoint Online sites. I don't have an exact time frame right now, but I know that there's a lot of planning going on behind the scenes to get those sites migrated. So when that process starts in the Northeast region, I will be reaching out to individual site owners, and we will work together on making sure that your site gets converted over to a SharePoint Online site. SharePoint Online is the version of SharePoint that's available through Office 365, and it does two different things. It provides the document storage part of a Teams site. When you create a Teams site and you store a document on it, it's actually going to be stored in SharePoint. And you can view it on the Teams site itself, or you can view it in SharePoint. And we'll show you what that looks like when we pull up Teams during the demo section. You can also have a standalone SharePoint site. You can have an internal site that is just available to folks within the Department of Interior, or you can request an external site. And an external SharePoint site is available to partners that you have outside of the Department of Interior. If you're interested in requesting an external SharePoint site, at this point, the department creates all of those sites, and so we will include the link to request a site, and if you have any questions about that, you can contact me directly. But the department actually has a web page with a form that you have to fill out to get an external site created. We haven't worked with that a whole lot yet. I know I worked with one division in the regional office to get a site set up just this week. So again, if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly and I'll work with you to make sure we can get that set up. Regarding SharePoint, there's a lot of planning work being done within the National Park Service in the background to work on governance and organization of the SharePoint hub structure within the Park Service. That is not in place yet, and that is impacting a little bit your access to create a SharePoint site on your own independent of a team. When completed, there's going to be what's called SharePoint hubs set up for each region in the Park Service, and under those SharePoint hubs, there will be collections of SharePoint sites that are organized by parks, by the regional offices, and by different program areas. And that is the structure that they're working on right now that'll tie all of our information together. The SharePoint hub for each region will include the Google sites that you had that are now SharePoint sites, any SharePoint sites that you have that are associated with Teams, as well as some of these other standalone sites that I mentioned. So again, those are things that are coming at this point. Part of that effort, because it's being organized and managed at the department level, we are waiting patiently to get access to do a lot of things to get this set up. Right now, most of the requests to get new sites and to change things regarding SharePoint sites actually have to go up to the department. There's not a lot of control that individual agencies have right now. So that is coming. Like I said, if you've got any questions or you're currently a SharePoint 2013 site owner and want to reach out to me directly, I'm happy to talk to you. Okay. All right. We already talked about Zoom. So at this point, we're not going to open it up for questions. I'm going to actually move over to the demo section. So give me a second to get there. All right. So everybody should be able to see my Outlook mailbox. Let me actually, I'm going to do that for a second. We'll start at the beginning. Everyone should have the new Office 365 Bison Connect icon on their desktop. This is the web version, or what's also called OWA, Outlook Web Access, that everybody in the National Park Service has access to. We got a few questions in yesterday's session about Outlook Desktop. You also have the ability to install Outlook Desktop if you want. We will include a link for the directions to do that in the notes that are coming out after today's session. I currently do not have Outlook Desktop installed on this laptop, but you can have both installed if you want. The demos that we show today are going to be using OWA. So let me start that up. Okay. First, we're going to talk about OneDrive. And the way that you can easily get to OneDrive from your mailbox is go up to your app launcher, which is also called the waffle here on the left-hand side of your Outlook screen. So if you click on the app launcher, you'll find all of the apps that are located in Office 365. So let's go ahead and go to OneDrive. We'll talk about OneDrive for a minute here. Okay, here is my OneDrive. From your OneDrive, you can access all of the files that you have stored in the cloud. Your file storage in OneDrive is unlimited. So one of the things that you might want to consider is if you currently have files that are located in your C drive, go ahead and upload those to your OneDrive storage. If you have files that are stored on a network server, this is also your opportunity to upload them and store them in OneDrive. OneDrive does give you the ability to sync files with your desktop. So if you have a need to work offline and not maintain an internet connection, you can do that using this sync option. I'm not going to demonstrate sync, but I just wanted you to be aware that that is an option that's available. From the OneDrive screen, you can also create any new files you want in the Office 365 applications by clicking on New, and you can go ahead and create a file from there. You can also upload, as I mentioned, either files or folders from OneDrive. Okay. Go back to your Files view again. You can easily jump back to any recent files that you worked on by clicking on Recent. And that shows, here's what I was working on today, earlier today. Here's what I worked on yesterday. It just gives another easy way to jump between resources. A lot of the questions that we've had regarding OneDrive as people moved to Office 365 are about documents that are shared with me. So let me just point out a couple of things that we have noticed since we've moved. I'll give my screen a chance to refresh. If you click on the Shared button, you'll see up here at the top, you can look at documents that are shared with you or shared by you from this view. So if you look at my screen, you can see that here's a whole bunch of stuff that was shared with me. I click on Shared by You. These are all the documents that I've shared with other individuals. So we go back to Shared with You. One of the comments that we've received is that some individuals have had a difficult time seeing items that were shared with them. If somebody shared an individual document or a folder with them, we're finding that they go to their Shared with You view and then they can't see the document. When you share a document with somebody, they actually get a link in their email and you can access the document from that link in the email, or you can access it from the Shared with You view. And let me actually, for people that haven't shared a document in Office 365, let me just do that. We'll pull up a folder. Actually, that's not what I wanted to open, but hang on just a minute. Let's do it this way. I'm just going to create a new document from the start here. Okay. Oh, hang on a minute. This is just really slow to refresh here. So I've just created a new document in Word. As soon as my screen refreshes, we're just going to go ahead and share real quick. Okay. So I've started a new document in Word. I'm done editing it, and now I decide I want to go ahead and have somebody else take a look at it. And instead of going ahead and copying a link and putting it in an email message and sending it off that way, I can just click on the Share button, pick the individual that I want to share it with. There's Dominic. And add a message if I want, and then click Send, and then he'll get a link to my document in his email. He'll also be able to go to his OneDrive and find this document that I just shared. So that's a quick, easy way to actually comment I made earlier about not having the ability to see items that are shared with you. If you do run into that problem, you're now in the future. One of the tricks that we found is that you can scroll down to the bottom of your screen, go ahead and click on Return to Classic OneDrive, and that will change your view. And what we're finding for a lot of users is if you change your view to Classic OneDrive, then all of a sudden you can see your document. You can toggle back and forth between the cloud and OneDrive experience just on OneDrive. So again, give me a second. It's just taking a minute to go back and forth.
So I'm getting some latency.
Okay, so Dominic, at this point, I'm noticing that on my end. So let's stop for a minute and ask for any questions on OneDrive.
The first OneDrive my question was when people are sharing it and anybody else gets it, and I think it's the confusion between the purpose of OneDrive is your document folder and syncing versus your SharePoint or team folder where you're collaborating. So reiterating that OneDrive is really your personal documents, and if you are sharing some of those documents with other people, it should be a very limited group of people. If you're more than 2 or 3 people, it's probably better to put that document into the teams. The other confusion was around the sync. You don't sync all of your files because that would dump all of those files to your computer. You sync individual files or individual folders you want to look at.
Oh.
I think there was a question about capacity of OneDrive and your email. How much space do you have?
Your OneDrive space is unlimited.
Okay. The other thing was associated with the difference between a desktop version of something and the online version of something, and whether that affects. Why would you do that? Why would you have an online version?
Related to Outlook, I'm assuming.
Outlook, but I think one way is also think about it is you're editing documents, sometimes an online version of Word or Excel, but there is a desktop version that has more robust features associated. That's the same thing with some of the other apps that you have. So people were asking, why would I want to do that? And the answer is more functionality.
And more functionality is the overall comment.
Right. Can you delete your chats? We'll talk about that in Teams. I think there's a lot of questions about inside versus outside the firewall and sharing documents and getting information. So if somebody shares a document with you outside the firewall, you can edit it, but you can't necessarily share a document with them, correct?
Right.
And then there's been several comments we had last time that shared, there's a bunch of sharing going on, and I know I shared it, and somebody shared it with me, and we can't find it anywhere, and then we go to some other thing, and it pops up, or it never pops up, and you got to work around for that?
Go to the classic OneDrive that I just showed to see if that makes a difference to see it. Beyond that, I don't have any other suggestions right now. I know that that is a known issue that keeps kind of popping up here and there, and that has been reported to the department and is something that they're working on with Microsoft. There are a number of things like that that are kind of anomalies with Office 365 that we're working through. If you have a question, though, or see a behavior that you expected it to work one way and it didn't, please go ahead and report that up through your IT folks, and we will determine if that's just the way it works or if there's truly a problem. But yes, that is a known issue right now with OneDrive, and please try that workaround first with switching between the classic and the modern OneDrive, and that may solve it for you.
Can you show us how to do that again, please?
Sure. So if you scroll down the bottom of your screen, click on Return to Classic OneDrive, that just changes your view, and you may find that your document shows up in this view versus the view I was just on. And the way that you can switch back and forth is you just click back on OneDrive again, and then you wait, and then you get back to the other view.
So other things we're starting to work around going into Teams. So one of the questions as you start covering the Teams is you've got a OneDrive document, you and your friend have figured that this is a good document, but now we need more eyes on it. How do I take my document and put it into Teams, and can we talk about Teams? Maybe a good time to talk about Teams now.
Hang on just a second, and let me just pull this up a second. Let me see if I can. Okay, I'm going to jump over to Teams. I was looking to see if we could show how to move a file. We'll come back to that if we need to. Okay, so let's go over to Teams then. Launch Teams, again, you can do that right from your apps launcher. It's not already loaded. And here's my Microsoft Teams site. And you'll see that I have a lot of chats going on the left-hand side. These are all your individual chats. They also might be group chats to go ahead if you haven't tried the chat feature before. If you want to chat with somebody, you just click on New Chat up here, type somebody's name, okay, and you can start chatting right here. And Dominic can chat back with me. In addition to just typing a message in the chat, you can format it, you can attach a document to a chat, you can add a little emoji if you want to, you can schedule a meeting from your chat. There's all kinds of things you can do. You can also, if you decide that you don't want to chat but you need to talk, instead of getting on the phone, you can go right from the chat, and if I decided I want to talk to Dominic, I could just click on the audio call icon and call him right from my computer. You can also launch a video call from any chat. If Dominic and I were talking and decided that, hey, we needed to loop somebody else into the call, again, we wouldn't need to pick up the phone at this point. We could click on the Add People icon. We could add somebody else to the chat, and now we've got a three-way chat going on. And again, if we decided that typing wasn't doing it for us, we could go ahead and launch an audio or a video call right from our chat and start a meeting on the fly that way. So again, this is a really powerful tool. You can do all kinds of stuff with it beyond just chatting that we did in Google Chat. So again, those are just some really quick ways you can use chat between individuals. If you don't like this cluttered look with all of these chats, you can go ahead and use a filter, and you can filter by keyword. You can, you cannot, I know there was a question about deleting chats. Your chats are records and they cannot be deleted. So just be mindful of that. You know, you are working on your government computer, so again, all of your chats are going to stay there. Okay, Dominic, anything you want to add to chat that I forgot?
Nope, I don't think so. I think you can put hot links in there if that works.
You can do, yep, you can do all kinds of stuff. A lot of times I can just, you know, make a comment from a support perspective. If
I would say
somebody that
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That has a question about something and maybe I want to point them to a particular document, a lot of times I'll use this attach feature and I'll throw that document right in the chat rather than going to Outlook and sending them an email. I can do it a lot more quickly and effectively right from the chat, and then they don't have to go dig through their emails to find it.
I think the other thing is there's a gazillion and one chats, so you can hide chats so they're not, it's like they're in a chat, you can hide them, and you can also take a chat and pin it, so if there's somebody or a group of people that you're typically chatting with on a regular basis, you can pin that to the top. And that's just
right.
You just pick the chat, hit the little ellipse, and there's a pin on it. So if you take mine right there, yeah, go ahead and do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you
yep,
can pin
and just say pin. Now
so
I'm pinned to the top.
I'm Heidi's favorite. I always knew that.
Yep, there you go. And you can see there's all these that are in bold are people that have chatted me, and I have not read their chat yet. I haven't opened up their chat. So these are ones that are waiting for me. Okay. The other thing you do is, this is a group chat I have with 3 different individuals, and if I put a message in here, just be mindful that all 3 of these people are going to see anything I chat, even if it's to one of the individuals. If I want to make sure that this one particular person in this group chat realizes that I sent a chat directly to them, I can use the @ symbol and put their name, and then they'll get a notification pop up. There's a chat directed right to them. And so that's a really nice way to get someone's attention. See, I'm not going to go ahead and send this because she won't know that we're doing that. But anyways, just so you can use that @ symbol to direct a chat to any particular individual. Okay, so with that, let's jump over to Teams, which is my favorite thing. Okay, so in Microsoft Teams, you can do all kinds of stuff in addition to chatting with a group of individuals. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the teams that I'm currently a member of, all listed on the bottom here. And you can, all of the teams that you're a member of or that you created are listed on the left-hand panel of your screen. And I'm going to use one just for demonstration purposes. This is the team that we have set up with our IT specialists in the Northeast region to do a number of things. Each team, when it's created, is given a name, and there's an owner. You can have multiple owners to a team. Team members are within the department. There are a number of tools within Microsoft Teams that you can use to organize and share information. Let me just step through a few of those. We mentioned chatting earlier. In actual Microsoft Team, and they just changed this, instead of saying chat up here, within a team, these are called posts, but it is a chat that anybody who's a member of the team can see all of these chats. So it's really great if you're working on a project and you have a team set up, because you can do live chatting with everybody who's a member of the team. So again, really powerful tool that you can use. In addition, each team comes with the ability to store files. So
before you go to the files, the @ command to the individual members of the team, or if you do @ to the entire team, everybody gets a pop-up on their desktop.
Right, and you can see right down here at the bottom where it says start a new conversation, type @ to mention someone. That's just a little reminder you can do that. Thank you.
Yeah, but you can do @ in the name of the chat or the whole team, and it will send everybody in the team that notification.
Right, and the name of the team is this group. So if you're going to do it to everybody, that's how you would do it. So each individual team also has file storage. Let me go, actually, go to the General tab to show you that. Okay, so these are a bunch of files and folders that we've shared with our IT specialists that are members of this team. You'll see we have folders, and we also have, if you scroll down, individual documents. The way that they got there is we either created new documents or we uploaded them from other places. It's very easy to do this, and anybody who is a member of the team has access to all of these documents. I mentioned earlier that the file storage associated with a team is actually supported by a Sharepoint site. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I scroll down, let's see, let's pull this document up. All right, if I want to look at this document in SharePoint, okay, there is the SharePoint site that is created and is linked to my Microsoft team. I did not go into SharePoint to create this. When my Microsoft team was created, the SharePoint site was created automatically. And if you were to scroll down through this document list, this is all the documents that are associated with my SharePoint site. So it's another place to see your documentation that's stored within a team. So again, really powerful tool you can use. The nice thing about having a SharePoint site to store your files is if you want to go ahead and change the access to particular documents. I mentioned earlier that any document that is shared on a team site is available for the whole team. You can change that by going to the SharePoint view and changing the permissions on particular documents if that's of interest to you. So I'm going to back up again and go to the Teams, back to the Teams site, show you a couple of other things. So in addition to file storage, and how
the question was originally, Heidi, about you've got a OneDrive file and you want to get it into that team?
You have to use, there's a function called move from OneDrive, and that's what I was trying to find earlier. I got to look and see where that is, but I know there's a function called move in OneDrive, and it'll let you move it right to Microsoft Teams. Okay. In addition to file storage, you can also use, there's a Wiki function that comes with every team, and let me just click on that. It just gives you an untitled page that you can use to modify any way that you want. One of the things that we've done with this particular team is that we use a Wiki page to store meeting notes for conference calls. So when we have our monthly meetings, people can go to this tab and see what our meeting agenda is rather than having to look at it in the calendar invite. So just some ideas of how you can use Teams. The other thing we did was we created a wiki, and we have critical deadlines included. And again, we post, instead of sending these all the time out in email, we try to keep them posted on our team site so people can easily get to them and refer to them on a month-to-month basis. If you want to add additional tabs up here, additional functions to the top, all you do is click on Add Tab. And again, when I did the wiki, I just clicked on the wiki tab and it gave me a blank page, and I went and created it from there. You can also pin any of these other applications to tabs at the top of your screen. So again, there's a lot of abilities to customize a team site depending on what the needs are of your particular work group. Within each team, you can further organize what you're doing by creating what are called channels, and that's what these different subjects represent. These are all channels: Active Directory procedures, enterprise meeting, messaging, and collaboration. And the way that channels are used within a team is to organize your information by topic or by subgroup. In this particular team, we're organizing information by subgroup. But say you had a team set up for your whole park. You could do that and have individual channels for different program areas if you wanted to do that. Or if you had a large project and you had sub-projects underneath it, you could have channels for each of those sub-projects, and all of the documents associated with each of those channels and all the conversations associated with each of those channels all stay together. So again, it's just another way to work a little bit differently. So if you look at one of these, let's pull up enterprise messaging and collaboration, since this was our hot topic over the last few months. So as we, as a IT community, got ready to move to Office 365, we had a group chat going under this channel just to talk about enterprise messaging and collaboration issues, and there was a whole bunch of posts there. It was a great way for us to get questions and to answer questions from folks. As we had files and resources to share with them related to the migration, we stored those in files, and so you can see a bunch of resources we shared. And then again, we, if we wanted to keep meeting notes, we could do that here as well. So again, just a way that you can use channels. You can create channels very easily just by clicking on Add Channel, give the channel a name, give it a description if you need to, and then you go ahead and add it. And anybody that's a member of your team can access any of the channels. At this point in time, there is not the ability to restrict channels to say only certain members of the team can access certain channels. We've been told by Microsoft that this is a feature that is coming, but as of right now, that is not available. So just for future planning purposes, if you're looking at Teams and how you might want to use it, just know that that is something to expect in the future with the Teams application.
So Heidi, there's a lot of questions around sort of, again, inside and outside the firewall for teams and members versus guests. Could you go over that briefly?
Sure. Microsoft Teams are behind the firewall. Microsoft Teams meetings, you can have external clients. You cannot have somebody who's outside of DOI be a member of your team.
So you can call outside and have a team meeting and invite an external partner to that team meeting.
Yes.
But they cannot then, and you can, if they initiate the document, you can comment on the document, and it can be linked in Teams or in the area. but you cannot store the document in your team storage on SharePoint and have them have access to it.
No, they don't. They have no access to your team because that is behind the firewall. That's part of the DOI Office 365 tenant that only folks in DOI have access to.
Okay, so there's questions on bandwidth with your team. So in general, video calls are more bandwidth, right?
Yes, video calls are more bandwidth. Again, I know people have, commented that they have different experiences with Teams as well as screen sharing tools, and it really does depend on the bandwidth that you have. Don't use video unless you need it.
Right. I guess the other piece of that is it's not you serving the video, it's the capacity of the person on the receiving end of the meeting in their pipeline.
Right. Yep.
So
One of the things that will give you additional options in the future, and we're actually testing it right now, I didn't mention this on yesterday's call, is that if you've ever participated in a Microsoft team outside of the Park Service, you may have noticed this as well. Microsoft Teams also has the ability to support a separate audio call-in line, just like our webinar today in Cisco Webex has a phone number associated with it. Right now, our Microsoft Teams within DOI do not have that feature enabled, and that's a licensing issue. The department has purchased licenses. We are in the process of testing them right now. That just started actually last Friday. I do have what's called a G5 license right now, and we're looking at how to make that functionality available throughout the region. So that is something that is coming. And what that would do for you is that if you're unable to join a meeting via computer for some reason and you want to join by a call-in number, you will eventually have the ability to do that.
So there's a question, and we're going back and forth on the team creates a SharePoint site, and in managing your documents, that ends up being a better place to manage your documents, opening up in SharePoint and then managing permissions and access to the document through the SharePoint link for the file.
Right.
So
there's more function.
You're not giving a guest pass to the document or team. You're giving access to a document that happens to be housed in the team SharePoint.
Right. Okay. Any other questions, Dominic? Otherwise, I'll go ahead and demo how to create a team.
We were looking at external partners. Calls are coming back and forth. The bandwidth was a big issue. I think we're going to go over the permissions as you get more into the SharePoint side of things. And individual people are having individual issues, and maybe we can just work through those at individual levels. Like there's some things that you're not allowing them to do, and that makes the use case. I may have to talk to Laura Cohen a little bit more specifically, and meet her when the time comes. But let's go ahead and I think we're to the place where we can move to how to create the teams and the groups and the naming conventions.
Okay. All right. So if you want to go ahead and create a team, you just click on Join or Create a Team here at the bottom of the screen. And then to create a team, we don't usually join a team with a code. You may have seen that in the past. Usually we just click on Create a Team to create a team. And to do that, you have two options. You can build a team from scratch, and that from scratch means that you add each name individually, or you can create a team from an existing Office 365 group or a team. Creating a team from an existing group is the preferred method to do that, and the reason why is that if you create a team site from an existing Office 365 group, you get the full functionality that's available within Teams. And what I mean by the full functionality is that you have access to all of the Office 365 apps, you have access to SharePoint, you have access to Microsoft Planner within your team. You also have a group mailbox associated with your team. and a group calendar. If you create a team from scratch, you do not have access to the team calendar, you don't have access to Planner, and there's no mailbox created. You still have access to SharePoint and the Office 365 apps. So again, creating a team from an existing Office 365 group is preferred. An Office 365 group, let me talk about this because this is a new animal that we're not accustomed to, and it's different than the groups that a lot of you may be familiar with. An Office 365 group is a group that is created in Office 365 from the employee directory. It is not an existing mailing list that you might have used in Google and are now using in Outlook. It is not an Active Directory permissions group. An Office 365 group is an Office 365 group. The folks that manage our Active Directory groups that give you all kinds of permissions within our network environment are looking at converting some of those existing groups to Office 365 groups, but that has not happened right now. That's something that is currently being worked on. But you have the ability to create an Office 365 group yourself. And we are going to show you how to do that from Outlook after we're done with the next part of the Teams demo. So again, you want to click on Create from a Group or a Team. I'm just going to click through a little bit of this without creating a group. Okay, so these are some groups that I currently have. I could create a team from any one of these existing groups if I wanted to. This one, the Northeast Region VoIP Redesign and Upgrade, is actually a Microsoft Planner plan, and I could go ahead and create a group right from that based on the permissions that I've given to the plan. So again, you just click on Create. I'm going to walk you through this without actually saving it. Okay, and that's it. The team's created. Okay, whoops. Let me go back to Teams real quick. Okay, again, to create a team, just click on Create a Team. If you were to build one from scratch, I'll show that anyways, you can select whether your team is a public team, meaning anyone in the organization, and that means anybody in the department can join your team, or it can be a private team, meaning you select which people get to join your team and which don't. If I was to click on private, you give your team a name, you provide a description, and then you can list all the individuals that you want to join your team from there. Okay, again, that's how to go ahead and create a team. Okay, Dominic, any questions at that point?
Lots of questions around, like, what do I do if I created a private team already? So, well, we don't have access to those things. So then a lot of questions like, how do I create a group? So I think that's probably where we're going to end up going soon. Let's
jump over to how to create a group. So there are a few different ways to create a group in Microsoft Office 365. I'm not going to show you all of them. As with a lot of things in the Microsoft Office 365 suite, there are several ways to do a whole lot of things. And so if you're interested in seeing all of the options, I would suggest that you go back and take a look at the Teams training that's available. So this is maybe a good segue to mention what those training options are. On the NPS Office 365 SharePoint site that we shared with everybody, you should have received a whole bunch of links to this during the run-up to migration. That resource site still has all of the installation instructions on it, as well as links to all of the training options that you had available before we moved over to Outlook. And there are 3 different training options there. There are what are called Jumpstart guides, which are 1- or 2-page guides that give you basically the most popular functions within each of the Office 365 apps. There's also a training tool called Evolve 365, and those are individual kind of task-based training tools that you can run through at any time on any of the applications. They're usually like 5 or 10-minute training tools on specific tasks. The other thing that you might not be aware of is that the webinars that were offered and hosted by the external contractors supporting the migration effort, all of those webinars were taped. And so you can go ahead and listen to any of those from the NPS Office 365 SharePoint site. So if you were one of those individuals that did not get an opportunity to join a webinar that you were interested in, you can still listen to the recording and see the slides that were presented. So again, anytime that you want to go repeat that training or look at individual training tools for a reference, it's all still available to you. So again, we're going to go back to Outlook for a minute, and I'll show you how to create a group. Okay, so we're back here at my inbox. If you want to go ahead and create a group, like I mentioned, the easiest way that I've found is to do it right from your email. And you just scroll down to the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side, you'll see an option that says New Group. And let's see, this is slow to refresh. There we go. Okay. So to create a new group, you go ahead and give it a group name. You fill out a description. You determine what settings you want, whether it's a private or a public group. And then you can go ahead and hit the Create button and create it. With group names, one of the resources that you're going to be provided after today's webinar is the NPS Office 365 naming standards that give you the standard naming conventions for teams and groups. Please follow those when you're creating teams. If you've already created a group or a team site and you didn't use the naming conventions, not to worry. Those were just recently developed late in February, and I don't think they've been widely distributed. You can go ahead and change a group name or change a team name at any time. So again, there are standards out there. We wanted to make sure that people were aware of them, and please take a look at those before you start creating a group. But that's all you do to create a group. Like I said, you can do it in a number of ways. The easiest, quickest way I've found is just do it right from your Outlook inbox. Click on New Group, and you can go from there. If you want to find out if a group has already been created so that you don't end up trying to create a group that has the same name as the name that you're looking at, you can click on Discover Groups. And again, wait for that to load. And you can see a listing of all kinds of groups that have already been created throughout the Park Service and throughout the Department of Interior. And you can also request to join a group from there as well. Okay, you can also look at the groups that you've created yourself by clicking on Managed Groups. And again, we'll wait for this to refresh. These are groups that I've created and I own right now. Or I'm not own, but I'm a member of. And again, I'm just highlighting this one so you can see the information about this is a group I created. There are 3 members. Here's the description. Here's the email address associated with the group. Click down. You can see who the current members are. And at this point, if I wanted to add additional members to this group, I could do it right from here by clicking on Manage Group Members and just putting in individuals' names or email address, and go ahead and click Add Members, and they can be added to my group. All right, before we move on to SharePoint, we'll take additional questions on groups.
So we're back to the difference between a group and a mailing list. So a mailing list is something from the department level that are just things that are
mailing list. Yeah, mailing list is actually an Active Directory tool that's called a distribution group. actually a group created and managed in Active Directory, and you can't use distribution group as a means to create a team. At one point it was working for a little bit, but you can't. It's a different type of group. So again, you should create an Office 365 group.
Then we're running information. So we've got a group and we have information in it, and we realize we didn't have, or not the group, we have a team. We realize we didn't do it through a group. We want to redo it. We want to change our name, or we want to redo that. That doesn't seem to be working. So is the basic advice, like if you've done it the other way and you want the functionality of the full team through the groups, just recreate the site?
You could recreate the team site depending on how much information you have. You should be able to change the name of the team. We've had this question come up before about changing the access to a group. You can't do that. The only option is to create the team over.
Somebody wanted to know about Planner. Why would I care about Planner?
Okay, so let's go to, and then I also don't let me forget to show how to set up a Teams meeting. Let me jump over to Planner. So hang on, we gotta let this refresh a bit. This is really slow today. Okay, so from the apps launcher, here are the list of apps that you have available, but this isn't all that you have available. And I'm going to come back to Planner in a second. If you click on all apps, these are all the applications that you currently have available under Office 365. I would suggest that you check back here periodically, because as Microsoft announces additional Office 365 applications, you will start to see them show up under the Office 365 apps. Please be aware that if you see information on the Microsoft.com site about an Office 365 app being available, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have it accessible through our version of Office 365. We have Office 365 Pro Plus. Office 365, just like our Google access, is controlled by the department. So the department has a process that they go through when a new application is launched to determine whether it's going to be available to us within Office 365. So just because you might be aware of or talk to somebody who uses Office 365 and they have a current app, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have the ability to use it. And I'll give you one example from Teams, is that if you look at Microsoft Teams functionality outside of DOI, you'll notice that Teams has whiteboard capability, but if you look at our version of Microsoft Teams, we don't have it. And that's because that feature isn't enabled. Don't ask me why, but it isn't enabled in our version of it. So again, here are all the different apps that are available in Office 365. Let me talk about a couple of them. I'm not going to demo all of these, but I just wanted to point out what they are. This is the Evolve 365 training. There is a task, which is basically just a to-do list. Microsoft Stream is actually a really cool tool that will let you go ahead and record sessions within Teams. And an example of that is maybe you're in a Microsoft Teams meeting, you're doing some screen sharing, you're doing some, maybe you're running a training session, or you want to record a meeting. You can do that right from within your Teams meeting by clicking on record. That becomes a Microsoft Stream file, and then you can go ahead and save that right within your team, and people can play that anytime. So again, it's just a really cool tool that's available to everybody. Power Automate provides you the ability to do workflows. So if you want to, for example, create a Microsoft form, and then after the form's created, have that information in the form emailed to somebody, you can do that by using the Power Automate app. Microsoft Planner, let's jump to that for a minute so you can see what that looks like. This is, if you're familiar with using Microsoft Project, this is not a replacement for Microsoft Project. This is a slimmed down planning tool. It's really easy to use and get up and going quickly. You basically go into it, click on create a new plan, give your plan a name, decide who can have access to it, and then it walks you through how to create a plan. And you can see I have a few plans created here. Let me just click on a few of them so you can see what it looks like. You can go ahead and build tasks within your plan. You can have what's called buckets, and you can have buckets for particular groups of tasks. You can track them. You can see right here under this bucket security upgrade that we have 3 completed tasks under there. I'll click on them. You can see who they were assigned to, what they were, and that they've been completed. So again, if you're looking for planning tools, this is available to anybody who has access to Office 365 within the department, and you can use this anytime. And again, you can control who has access to that. I haven't played around with this a whole lot. I do know how to use it. There isn't any training that's up on the Office 365 site particular to Planner, but I'm sure if you go to the Microsoft site, you can find training if you're looking for training on Planner. I will try to answer questions as best I can about Planner. Like I said, I'm a new user myself, but there's a bunch of things that you can do in the planning tool. So let me go back here to the apps again. OneNote is also another app that you have available. Microsoft Forms is the app that replaced Google Forms. Click on that. This is very similar to how Google Forms worked in terms of if you're familiar with creating a form, you just click on New Form, you add new functions. It lets you do rating and ranking, multiple choice, and so on. You can also, once you create a form, you can store responses in an Excel spreadsheet just like you could in Google. It gives you information on how many responses you have, what the average time is to complete a particular response. So there's all kinds of information that you can collect. Go back to...
So I just want to share that in my Teams, I was able to add a channel, a little plus above, and add the planner into my existing team. So I didn't have to have a group for that. But if you have the group, it does some of the stuff more automatically. And there was a question about a team calendar, and we'll go ahead and touch on the calendars later. But I also wanted to remind you about setting up a team meeting.
Yep, so let's go back to Teams here. And let's show the calendar first, and then we'll do a Teams meeting. So here's my calendar within Microsoft Teams. These are not all Teams meetings, but you can see my calendar from here. If you were going to participate in a meeting, you could launch it right from your calendar. If I've got anyone, well, these are past ones, but if I clicked on this, you can see it's a team meeting. If I click on that and I want to go ahead and join, I just click the join button up here, or I can click this link down here and it will take me right to the Teams meeting. So that's basically all you do, and I can click on this. This is a past meeting, but this is what it would look like if I was joining a Teams meeting. I just clicked on join. If I clicked on join now, it said this is a past meeting, so I'm not sure what it's going to do. You'll connect through your computer. Now I'm in the Teams meeting. If I want to see who else is in the meeting with me, I can click on show participants. I can see myself. I can see the other people that are invited that haven't joined yet. But these are the other people that are supposed to be in the Teams meeting. When you join a Teams meeting, you're going to be joined with the camera off by default, thank goodness. If you want to turn your camera on, you just click on the camera icon to turn your video on so people can see you. One of best practices when you join a Teams meeting is you are joined with an open mic. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and mute yourself. And you can see I've muted myself you can tell by the icon next to my name. Shows the little microphone with a line through it. You can tell that I'm muted. Okay. Other actions, you can change a few of your settings. I had mentioned before that you can record a Teams meeting. You just click on Start Recording, and that meeting will be recorded. And then again, you can share that as a Microsoft stream file from there. You can have a conversation within a team just by clicking on the conversation icon and do a meeting chat if you want to. You can also, if you decide that you're in the middle of a Teams meeting and you forgot to invite somebody, you can just type their name up here. And if I was to click on Kim, then she would automatically be sent a notification saying that there was a Teams meeting in progress and she was invited to join. So again, super powerful, easy to use tool anytime you want to set up a meeting. So again, that is what the experience looks like if you're going to join a meeting. Let me jump back to calendar at this point.
Don't hang up on that meeting.
Oh, yeah, I've still got the meeting going. Hold on. Okay, now we're back. All right, you should be seeing my Outlook desktop again. So if you want to set up a Teams meeting from your Outlook calendar, let me show you how to do that. I click on my calendar icon, go to my calendar in Outlook. And eventually we'll get there. Okay, so there's my calendar. And what I've got going on today. Okay, if I click on New Event, apologize, this is slow today. Okay, and if I want to set up a Teams meeting, hang on, sorry, somebody is trying to call me. I'm just going to ignore that. If I want to set up a meeting, I can do it right from my calendar. I could type. I'm going to invite Dominic. Okay, and if I want to have this meeting as a Teams meeting, all I need to do is to click on Add Online Meeting and click on Teams Meeting. And when I save this meeting invitation, there'll be a link down here under the description box that will provide Dominic a link to the team meeting. So then when he goes to his calendar, all he needs to do is click on that link and he can join our team meeting. That's basically how to set up Teams meeting in a nutshell. It's really easy to do it right from the Teams application itself, or you can do it from Outlook Calendar. Okay, I know that folks noticed when I clicked on this that they also had Skype Meeting listed. We are not supposed to be using Skype. This is a function that's going to be removed. Right now it has to be removed by Microsoft, so you should be using Teams Meeting only. And we weren't really going to cover calendar, but we did have a few calendar questions come up. You notice that when I put in the date and time of the meeting, you can see over here on the right-hand side that I'm available for the meeting, and it also checked Dominic's calendar to make sure he was available as well.
Can you open the schedule assistant?
Yep, I sure can. On that, okay. So if we weren't sure when we wanted to meet, the scheduling assistant would provide a view of what our commitments are for the day. So you can see, you know, Dominic has something, he's busy from 2 to 3, and he's busy from 3:30 to 4:30, and you can see my schedule as well. So if you're just looking for an available time and you have some flexibility, the scheduling assistant is a really good tool to use.
You can create your own calendars or group calendars and then match them all together and make them visible. That's just the add calendar feature. So people were talking about all the group calendars that they used to have through.
Yep, and let me just, I'll show you that real quick. I do have that set up. So we have a lot of conference rooms in the regional office. So I had loaded all the conference room calendars to mine. So if I want to see the room calendars, I can just click on those. And then you can see my screen changing to add the different colors that represent the different calendars. If you want to add a calendar, you just click on Add Calendar. and this is really slow, but you can create additional calendars. You can add calendars from the directory.
So to be clear, you can create a leave request calendar for 3 parts that you manage, or 3 divisions, because whatever you're doing, and then those 3 different calendars can be seen all at the same time, and
Right.
you can use those to invite those calendars through the scheduling assistant you see.
Right, just like I was doing with room calendars.
Correct.
So you can overlay them together.
You can create resource calendars like the rooms that exist, but that's a departmental level calendar request. So fleet vehicles, for instance, or conference lines, or some things where you have a lot of different resources that are out there, you can create those as a resource calendar, and people can use their calendar invite when they're making an appointment to reserve that resource.
Right, and I can show you that real quick. If you do want to create a resource calendar for your group, then the way to do that is you need to work through your IT specialist, create a footprints ticket. Those resource calendars actually get created by the department, so we have to escalate it up to Washington and then to the department to get that created, and then it shows up in the directory. We do have a bunch of resource calendars, as I mentioned, in the regional office in Philadelphia. We use those extensively for our conference rooms. So if I was going to create a meeting, again, we'll just do a test meeting again, and I wanted to reserve a conference room, I just go down here to search room or location. I click on add room. Here's a room list of all the rooms that are available in the Northeast region. And you can see, based on the date and time of my meeting, any of the rooms that are available are listed in green. If I scroll down to Philadelphia office where I am, I can see that this huddle room here is available from the time and date that I wanted. If I clicked on it, it's just going to add that room, and then I just click on send to do the conference reservation. One of the things that you need to be aware of with resources that are located in the directory is when you create a meeting invite, you're actually inviting the attendee. Like if I was inviting Dominic to a meeting, I'm inviting Dominic, but I'm also inviting the room. So when Dominic gets my meeting invite and accepts it, and I get a message back saying, yes, he's accepted the calendar invite, he's going to attend my meeting, the room does the same thing. So you're going to get a message back saying that this room, Huddle Room 2009, has accepted my meeting. And that's how you know that your reservation is definitely confirmed. So just realize that's the way that Office 365, that's how Outlook Calendar manages resources. Okay, any other questions about Teams before we move on to SharePoint?
I think we got them, but they're so far up, if we don't have them, we'll have to answer them again.
Okay. All right.
There was a question real quick, because we were talking about documents in OneShare about the forms. The forms will copy the data from the form to a spreadsheet, but it doesn't do it in live, so you have to refresh that form and recreate that form every time. If you want to do that functionality where you have a live update, you have to create a flow or a Power Automate, which takes the form information and populates it in real time. And so that's a flow process. Let's explore that.
Yeah, and I can, if folks want information on how to use that, I'll see if there is a document already created. I have done that because that's what we do with the, you might have noticed that form that I had up, the POE form. That's how that works, is that that's live updated.
Right. And
so
Flow
can do that.
Yeah, it can do a lot of different things. The actual examples of the training that Microsoft is taking a calendar and popping it through, so it's pretty widely out there. You can do other things like you can add a document to a SharePoint site, and it will email the owner of the document that is there and request approvals, and then once it's approved, it'll send an email back to all the parties, et cetera, et cetera. So Flow integrates all your different programs. It's pretty in-depth and a little bit confusing.
And yeah, it is a little bit. But again, in the application that Dominic's talking about is down here, Power Automate, that you can use with forms. It used to be called Flow. You can still see where it's referred to as flow in other documentation, but it's the same thing. They just renamed it for some reason.
So I
Okay,
think
so
we're
ready to
yeah,
move to SharePoint?
yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so we opened up SharePoint from Teams. Now we're just going to go straight to SharePoint. Okay, when you go to SharePoint, you'll see that you'll have a bunch of different SharePoint sites suggested to you. You can click on any of these. You'll notice by the titles that some of these are DOI-wide, some of these are other agencies. We didn't have this before. Now you have the ability to search across SharePoint sites all through the department just by going to SharePoint at any time. Sites that you are following, and if you're following a site, you just click on the star to follow it. These are sites that I'm currently following. You can click on them to get to the SharePoint site. Any recent sites that I've been to, if you click on recent, those will come up. Let's just...
Can I, real quick before you go away, the importance of following is that case where you had a OneDrive file that you wanted to move to a SharePoint file. If you follow the SharePoint area, it appears automatically, and it's easier to do that.
Thank you. So here's I just clicked on the Department Office 365 SharePoint site. And you can just quickly go through their site. The Park Service site, let me just point this out to go back. You cannot get to the Park Service Office 365 site from this screen because this is SharePoint Online, and the Office 365 SharePoint site is currently in SharePoint 2016. So it's not a part of the online world yet. They're going to be moving it, but prior to the migration, they had to leave it out of Office 365. So again, you need to go, you'll see the link that we're going to send out if you don't have it already to get to that SharePoint site. But I just want to point that out. If you're searching for it, you're not going to find it by going to the online site. You'll have to use the direct link. Okay. If you want to search SharePoint sites, like I said, here's a search bar. You can type in different topics, and you'll find all kinds of documents and SharePoint sites throughout the department. So it's cool to go ahead and search from there. You can also create sites. You can see information on OneDrive. And like I said, I'm not going to go through a big SharePoint demonstration. If you want more in-depth information on how to manage documents in SharePoint, it would be good to go to the actual SharePoint training session to see that. Let me pull up though, let's see, good one to pull up. Let's look at this one. Okay, just so you can be familiar with what's available on a SharePoint site. You can see on each SharePoint site, this particular one is a private SharePoint site, so only folks that have permissions can view this information. You can see there's 76 members. If I wanted to go ahead and edit the site, I could click on Edit. I could change the look and feel of the site. I could move things around on the site. If I didn't like where the document library was, I could move it to a different location. This is very similar to some of the functions that we had in the other versions of SharePoint, like 2013 and 2016. Honestly, the SharePoint Online version I find a little bit cleaner and a lot less complicated to use than the older versions of SharePoint. I know that was one of the criticisms of SharePoint, is it seemed like it was a pretty steep learning curve to really become proficient with it. And if you want to get really fancy, it can get really complicated. But if you just have basic file storage needs, it's pretty quick to get up and running. And again, if you do venture into SharePoint from a Microsoft team, it's even easier to do that. You can do all the same functions in SharePoint Online that you have on the older versions of SharePoint, like create lists, create document libraries, things like that. keep a news site where you would put current information and update that on a periodic basis, you can do that all from SharePoint.
I think the key and some of the confusion around SharePoint is that the SharePoint is your equivalent of your Google site. There's information behind your Google site, and there's information behind the SharePoint site. So there's a whole bunch of documents and files and libraries behind the site, and what the SharePoint is trying to do with the page is to make that easy to find. So instead of giving somebody a location of a file that's 4 folders down, you can have an easy to link page on the internal website, which is the SharePoint. It shows how to get there, but at the same time, if you look to the right, all the files on that site are in the Documents folder. So the SharePoint site tries to help you navigate, and if you're managing this site with your team, you want to create links, areas, and web parts that help people find that information. So if there's a form, or if there's something you want people to access easily, like a calendar, that can go up into the front page, but all the back-end stuff, like what the individual spreadsheet to manage the approval ratings are, doesn't necessarily need to be there.
Okay. And I really suggest that if you're interested in really getting deep into SharePoint and creating your own SharePoint sites and doing a lot on the design side, please go to the MPS Office 365 SharePoint site and look for the DOI Talent SharePoint Administrator training. There's a link to that training recording for that webinar. They did 2 different SharePoint webinars before we moved to Office 365. One of those was for end users, and the other one was for site administrators. And the site administrator training was really good in terms of talking about how to set permissions, best practices to manage permissions, how to deal with different kinds of web parts, what the options were in terms of design aspects. So it gives you a really good foundation of what a SharePoint site can do. An average end user that is just looking to SharePoint to find a document doesn't need that level of training, but if you're more interested in the design and management side and looking for additional training resources, please go check out those webinars. I sat in on both of them, and they were actually really good.
There's a question about the old SharePoint sites that were in Office 365. Do they migrate, like the agreement site or some of the other things?
The Google sites migrated to SharePoint Online, which is what you're looking at now. The older SharePoint sites, like the agreement sites, NER budget, I know we have an IT SharePoint site. Those are all of the sites that I referred to earlier that are SharePoint 2013 sites. They are not in the cloud. They're actually sitting on a server farm in the Denver data center. Those will be moved to SharePoint Online at some point this year. I just don't know exactly what dates we're going to be scheduled to move, because they're actually just starting that process. They're working with Alaska, I believe, starting next week. So I don't have dates yet for the Northeast region, but that is coming. And then once that happens, you'll be able to find any SharePoint site right from the screen that we were looking at before. You'll be able to search across all of them. Right now, we've got 2 different environments, what they call an on-prem environment, meaning it's on a server, and when we have the online environment.
But you can still access those old sites, correct?
You can still access all of those sites. And what we'll do, I'm just making a note of it now, we'll include in the information we're going to send out a link to those 2013 SharePoint sites. There is a directory that you can access that lists all the sites that we currently have available and the links to all of those. So we'll send that out again in case you're looking for a SharePoint site.
Can you go to the document library there and look at that?
Sure.
And then talk about some sharing and permissions and stuff and creating permissions?
Excuse me.
I think you're in design.
Yeah, what did you want?
Design, yeah, if you just go over to one of the, just push republish because you're in design view right now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if you go to one of the, either on the right or the left, all the way over to your left, you can access the document libraries all the way to your left too.
Oh, you're talking about the ones on this.
Yeah, so that just tells you, that just that's the bones of the site.
Yep.
But if you drill down into something and give permissions, like show us what the permissions look like and how to give permissions.
Okay. So if you're going to take this, you click on Manage Access. Say I wanted to lock down this folder. This is who currently owns it. If I want to change the access, I can add additional people by clicking on Direct Access and change any of the permissions from there. So again, all I did was I clicked on these 3 dots and I went to Manage Access, and you can manage that by group or individual right from there.
So from your team, you can go to the View Your Sharepoint site from your team, which will get all your information in SharePoint, and you can manage these documents the same way in the team level or at these upper level SharePoint sites as well.
Yep, and this is it's the same functionality. It's just it's located in a little different place than in the other versions of SharePoint. But yeah, you can manage down to the actual document level, again, as a best practice, and this is the same with the older versions of SharePoint. We don't recommend going crazy with permissioning. You really need to do planning behind that so that you're only assigning permissions to things that really need permissions. And I'll throw a couple of examples just off the top of my head. If you're looking at sharing sensitive documents, like say you're an HR group and you want to share documents, then you might want to consider having a specific team where you can share among the team rather than going to SharePoint and have a lot of complicated permissions from there. You can certainly do both, but again, the more permissions you create, and please keep this in mind, the owner has to manage those. So you want to try to keep it as streamlined as possible. But yes, you can lock down to the individual document level. We've done that. One example I can give you is the EO folks at one point with the traditional SharePoint sites had items locked down to the individual folder because they wanted to be able to make sure that the EO counselors could only see the documents that they were in charge of working with and not documents that other counselors were working on. So again, you can do that advanced permissioning if you have that need. Other questions?
Yeah, somebody wants to know if they should stay with the mutual funds or go with indexed.
You can answer that one.
Settings and permissions and being able to follow. There was a question on following sites, and some sites you can allow following and others can't. And
if they are, I think it's a public versus a private site. If it's
Correct.
a public site, you can choose to follow it. If it's a private site, you can't follow it because you don't have permissions to it.
Right. And just to reiterate, this is all inside the firewall, but within the DOI as part. If you have a DOI access, you can share it broadly with other agencies, but
yes.
you can't share it outside of the Department of the Interior. So Forest Service cannot see your documents.
Right. And again, if you have a need for a tool like SharePoint outside of the firewall, you do have the ability to have an external SharePoint site created. Again, that's done at the department level, and we're going to send out a link to the page to request those sites. How are we doing with questions, Dominic? I know we've gone a little bit over. I'm willing to stay as long as we have questions.
Oh boy, we had a lot of different things. I think we covered most of them. Why don't we come out and give people a chance if they're not in the chat feature, and I'll do a quick. So without going to your individual cases, if there's some broader questions for the good of the order, I would say we'll prioritize those first, and if people have some specific things that they're trying to do, we can look at those. So if you stop sharing the
yep. Hang on.
There you go.
We're back.
All right. So everybody wants to know, is this recorded? Is there going to be more? all that good stuff. So ideally we've recorded it, but we'll have to see how that works.
We hope it's recorded. Certainly, if you would like us to repeat this, I'm more than happy to do that. And again, I want to thank Dom for his assistance today. We could have done this without his help. And again, we are willing to host additional sessions. Just let us know what you're interested in. And like we did with these 2 sessions, we will put something together.
So everybody's going to receive resources, tip sheets, naming conventions, that kind of stuff. So that's coming sort of after we shut down.
What's going to come out to you is we're going to do a quick recap of the session with links to some of the resources. There's also a document called the Virtual Meeting Guide that talks about audio and video conferencing and has a few little tutorial items on Microsoft Teams that you have access to, the naming conventions, a tip sheet on creating groups, as well as links to the training resources that we've been mentioning throughout this webinar.
So let's go ahead and say if you're satiated and you said, nice big meal, I am stuffed, I would say you can go ahead and we'll end things for you. We will stick around for a while if you want some questions to be asked, and we'll try to manage that more through personal connections via the phone. So instead of me unmuting 100 people and everybody hearing a dog bark at a fire engine that's running by and you having your phone on no headset so we get the Jimi Hendrix experience, I'll just wait a little while. Or if you have a question that you can write in the chat, we can answer it there. So otherwise, we'll hang out for a second and let people go ahead and clear through. And thank you for attending. And then we'll
Yes, thank you very much.
Can you see your work calendars on your personal devices?
You can see your calendar on your personal device. If you have what's called the POE container on your personal device, and some of you may remember this from when you were in Google, we still do have access if you want to view your work email from your personal device. You can request that. There's a form called the POE form that you have to fill out, and then the department will grant you access on your personal device. We'll go ahead and include that as well in the links after this webinar.
We won't give it to Elizabeth because she wants it bad.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you don't know your on your work phones, Outlook, the email client and the calendar client are the same thing. You just have to click a little button in the bottom. I just figured that out. So, Chair.
If you have any other questions about your government phone, just one other thing to point out. From your government phone, you can use the native mail app, which is the envelope icon that you have on your phone. You can also actually download the Outlook client right from the app catalog. So you could use either one on your phone. And again, that app catalog, I'm clicking on mine now, just so I remember what you can download from it. You can download Teams, you can download OneDrive, Outlook, and OneNote, PowerPoint, Excel, and Word. Those are all accessible from your government phone. And
I have a Power Automate function, so there are buttons that you can create in Power Automate that allow you to do things from your phone, which is kind of interesting. So email functionality and notifications and push notifications. So for instance, if an email comes from a particular person or group, it can push that to your phone. So lots of fun things.
Lots of cool tools that we just, now that we're migrated, we can spend some time to really play with some more.
How do we get the app catalog? I'm not sure I actually see that in that thing.
The app catalog should already be on your phone. It should be located, it's a blue icon to the left of your MOS 360 icon on your government phone. So it's not your app store, it says app catalog. It's kind of a grayish blue icon. And if you click on that, it will list all the available apps. Okay, if you don't see that on your government phone, talk to your IT specialist.
Okay, Heidi, I don't see it, but I'm not going to talk to you on the phone. So there's a syncing issue, and I was having some similar issues that some of the phones weren't syncing. So I think that's a whole other topic area that we may want to cover some other time later. Get your phone looked up and hooked up and things you can do with it. Maybe we should also send out a, like, what do you want further information on? Kind of, we'll include that maybe with the,
Yeah, we'll include that with follow-up.
do a forum follow-up or something with everybody. All right, so I currently have 60 people, and I will attempt right now to unmute everybody. So you're going to have to come back and mute yourself so that we don't get all the screams and hoots, and then we'll be able to control the audio individually. If you do scream and hoot, I will mute you again, and you will be silent forever. You're going to have to give me the control, Heidi, just real quick.
Okay, hang on. Oh.
Change the role to
Looking right at you. I'm going to change it to host.
presenter would be fine.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh.
Audio. Speaker participant. All right, here we go. Ready? Unmute. I'm getting feedback already. Margaret's another one. There we go. Okay, everybody's unmuted. So if anybody has any questions you'd like to ask, now is the time.
So this is Elizabeth. I have more of a question about the calendar. I was able to, I know things are different, we're on a different system, but when we had the Google Calendar, I could view it in my Google Calendar, my personal Google Calendar, but I couldn't edit it. That's all I'm asking to do is just be able to see it.
You could see your government Google Calendar in your personal calendar?
Yeah, I could, my personal Google Calendar, so I could share my government calendar to my personal one.
To your personal one. And I will confirm that, but I do not believe you can do that in Office 365. But I will check.
Okay. So then I have to get the form that you spoke of, the POE container?
The POE container.
Okay. Yeah, because I just want to be able to see both calendars at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, the POE container is the thing to do, and like I said, we'll include the link in the follow-up documentation so you know how to get to that form.
Then another question would be, can I do it the other direction? Can I share my personal Outlook calendar to my government calendar so again I could see things both at the same time?
The problem with that, I think, is going to be with your Office 365 license.
Okay.
But like I said, we'll include that in the FAQs.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, any other questions? I had to mute some folks. Dog barking, but that's just the way it goes.
This is Heidi and Dom. This is Debbie. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hey, Debbie.
Yeah. So in the information you're going to send out, I hadn't heard about groups until today. I'd been working with teams, but had never created the group first. So will there be more information about, I mean, I think I understand that you create a group. It's better to create the group and then the team. But more information about, is there any reason that you would just create a group and not a team, or, you know, just more about teams and groups?
There's one of the documents that we're going to send out just talks about groups. And
Great.
so that should cover any questions that you have and why groups and how groups are used.
Okay. And I am correct that you should, before you create a team, you should create a group first, is the best practice.
That's best practice. You can do it without it, but that's the way they recommend you doing it, is create a group first.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Question.
So Elizabeth, again, I've got another question. So I've been finding it really hard if I put a file into my Teams and then I had somebody who was not in the Teams and I wanted to share it with them. I just can't seem to do that. What's the workaround?
You're talking about somebody who's not in the team and then you want to share the file with them?
Exactly. I mean, is there a way to make that a person a guest in the team? I don't understand all of that stuff.
You should be able to get to the SharePoint.
You can do it, actually you can do it from right within the team. You should be able to share with them.
I haven't been able to yet. Maybe I'm just not that gifted.
We will, yeah, I'll find the instructions on that. I know you can do it, and I've done it before.
Okay. And would that include also how to make the person a guest? Like if I wanted to have them there more than one time?
You can't really make them a guest. You could either, you could add them to the team, and you could certainly remove them from the team at any time.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
When a guest is added, do they have a certain time frame that they are allowed to participate?
And you're talking about a team or a Teams meeting? Because there isn't really a guest in a team. You're either a member of a team or you're not. So the person who owns the team actually controls who the members are. So if I had a team and I was going to invite you into the team, but I only wanted to give you access today, I would add you to the team today and I'd remove you tomorrow.
Thank you.
That's how that works.
So can you search for teams that exist?
You can search for teams that you are a member of within Teams, and you can also, I'm thinking this through without it up on the screen. If you're in Teams and you scroll down to the bottom left side, I think you can see a list of teams from there. Some teams, again, you can't join them unless, just like Sharepoint Sites, if they're private, you can't join them. If they're public, anybody can click on them.
Right. I clicked the join and create the team and the little gear icon, and that brought up a list of all the teams I belong to, but also the global teams. So.
Yep. There's a lot of stuff you can search for. And that's, you know, one of the things, if you think about the whole idea of collaboration, this is what these tools were designed to do. It's giving you an opportunity to go out based on things that you're interested in and find like communities out there. So if you're a GIS person and you're a member of the Park Service GIS team, maybe you want to find out what some of the other agencies within DOI are doing. So you could go out and search for related SharePoint sites, teams, and then again, you can request membership, and if they're public teams or public SharePoint sites, you can find that information out.
So some had a comment, a bunch of their emails are under junk. Is there a fix?
Yes, there is a document that is on the NPS Office 365 SharePoint site that specifically walks you through how to deal with managing junk in Outlook. And we'll actually call that document out by name in the notes as well. But it is on the NPS Office 365 Migration SharePoint site.
So let's see, this is SharePoint. Let me put that in here. Here's the Microsoft Office 365 SharePoint Site. Yay, there's a link. Where are the videos of the webinars? Are they still on that Office 365 site, Heidi?
They're on the Office 365 SharePoint site. The quick link or the Jumpstart documents that are those one-pagers, the actual recordings of the webinars, and the Evolve 365 training, which is the self-paced, task-based training on the Office 365 apps. Those are all still available on the MPS Office 365 site.
It's under the training tab.
Mm-hmm.
There, I got it. That's on there. There's the link. All right, down to 28 people. Anything else? I'm almost going to have to declare golden chair because I've had a lot of tea and no break. So. All right. I think we're at the point where we can say goodbye.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for your participation.
Okay, and then when you go out, it should
Shut me down. Yep.
Well, it'll shut. You're gonna shut everybody down, but it may ask you a question about the recording, and so we'll just wait and see what happens with the recording.
Okay. Hang on.
It should go to our. It should have gone to the server.